West Virginia falls to Kansas at home in overtime by the score of 55-42. Not too often you see a 13-point loss in overtime, but it's not too often WVU starts the season 0-2 either. The last time our Mountaineers started 0-2 was 1979. And when you look at the schedule after Virginia Tech, it doesn't seem like it's getting any better anytime soon. So, any enthusiasm for this year was absolutely crushed against Kansas. And although Neil Brown's buyout makes it almost impossible, a lot of people are calling for the firing of Neil Brown's. But I think it's safe to say officially nobody is trusting the climb now. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I don't think I've ever been so upset after a WVU loss, at least in a long time. And just looking at Kansas and their performance over the years, it just makes the loss even that much worse. So since 2008, which was Kansas's last winning season, Kansas has 4 road wins before this past Saturday. 2009 against UTEP, 2018 versus Central Michigan, 2019 versus Boston College, and 2021 against Texas. And then most recently this Saturday in Morgantown. That's not a great list of teams to be up there with, especially knowing how that Texas team performed last year, how bad they were. And that's kind of where we're at now. And that's all on the coaching. Obviously there's some player mistakes in the past 2 games that definitely didn't help, but I felt like there were coaching decisions in both these games that could have made things winnable easily.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue. That was probably the most disappointing game I've ever witnessed since the 2007 Pitt game. I can't think of any game since then that was as disappointing. Some people have been bringing up the Kansas loss that Holgerson had, but that was on the road. So to me, this is definitely worse. I mean, you're at home and you fall to Kansas. I don't know. Neil Brown is proving that he's just not qualified or capable of being a head coach at a Power 5 program. I just can no longer defend him. I have no more excuses for him. I've made a lot over the years, and I've just ran out, honestly. The bottom line is he's not getting the job done, and what he's done is indefensible so far. The talent's there. We keep giving him the excuse that Dana didn't leave him a lot of talent. He's got players this year, so that excuse is gone. And his poor coaching and leadership is just turning WVU into a laughingstock. It feels like I feel like the fans, for the most part, have been more than fair to Neil Brown. They've waited. This is his 4th year. It's his players. And even after losing to a hated rival like Pitt, most fans were still excited for WVU football. And so you got to give our fans credit. But now, after losing to Kansas, I don't think there's one single excited Mountaineer fan for this football season. And that's because, once again, Neil Brown's football team was undisciplined. They were ill prepared for their opponent, it seemed like. And he just got outcoached. In his 3+ years at West Virginia, his teams have always played up or down to their opponent's level. And because of that, he got burnt once again by a squad. I understand Kansas is on the rise and they're not the doormat they used to be, but you're at home. There's no excuse for losing to Kansas there.
No.
And honestly, if you break it down, I feel like West Virginia has the better players on that team. And so I don't know. It's not like WVU has lost 2 straight games to superior opponents. I feel like Neil Brown has just proven that he's not a Power 5 head coach in these past 2 games.
Yeah, and I think another thing that kind of bums me out as a WVU fan is that the program's at a state now where this win for Kansas isn't really even a talking point for a lot of people. I mean, obviously we were overshadowed by Notre Dame losing, Texas A&M losing. I think there's a third school who got upset as well, and then Scott Frost getting fired. But it's still Kansas, and we're at a point now as a program where it's not even like a headline. It's not even like I was watching videos earlier today about the top 3 or 4 worst upsets of the past weekend, and we didn't even get an honorable mention. I mean, that's kind of where the program is now. And that's, obviously the beginning was a little tough for Neil Brown. I still kind of think that Dana left the cupboard a little bit bare for him. But like you said, all these are his guys. He has hand chosen every guy who's come in here. There may be a few carryovers. Like Bryce Ford Wheaton and Dante Stills, who came over from the Holgorsen era because they're, you know, 5th-year seniors, 6-year seniors, whatever they are. But you know, it's his group of guys, it's his group of coaches. He's made changes and he's been slow to change. I mean, it took him 3 years to realize he needed to get a offensive coordinator. He cycled through coaches in the secondary. Um, you know, and it just seems like he just couldn't figure it out, and he still hasn't figured it out. And you know, we're going to talk about several things in this episode that kind of just show all of the things that lead to a loss, like the play calling, the um, choosing the starters, the who he's playing and who he's not. There's just so many different pieces that kind of just augment the argument that Neil Brown is in over his head and hasn't shown. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you, what record would Kansas need to finish with for this loss to become more palatable?
I say bare minimum, Kansas has to be an 8-4 team for me to look back and say, well, that was a quality opponent, and we just lost to the better team that day. But even then, I don't even know if I truly believe that in my heart, because you know, I was there and I saw it. I felt like they just had a better leader. They had a better coach and a coaching staff, and because I still think pound for pound we had the better guys on the field. It's just we lost when it came to the X's and O's. I mean, our defensive front, we'll get into this later, they played very well for those first few series, absolutely shut Kansas down. And then it seemed like Kansas adjusted. And we, as always, just never did. We just kept doing the same thing over and over again and left our corners on islands. I mean, like I said, we'll break down the X's and O's here a little bit, but I mean, how many times have we come on here and talked about how Neil Brown made no adjustments at halftime?
Yeah, I mean, the only time he's really made adjustments that I can think of was that Texas Tech game last year, where it just seemed like the entire team took the first half off, and I think the adjustment was just, you know, hey guys, play football, which, you know, looking at it, it really shouldn't be that hard of a thing to do. But losing to Texas Tech 17-0 going into halftime is not good, and I think that's just a sign of leadership. You know, you got to get your guys ready to play, and um, the offense looks better. I mean, we'll talk about that later, but the offense looks a lot better. And I think because Neil has been more hands off, um, you know, the offense has been better. But, you know, there's definitely some downsides there, even though we are scoring a lot of points. You can still look at the little kind of micro decisions or macro decisions, whichever one you want to say, that Neil Brown is kind of overseeing, whether it's situational play calling, whether it's, you know, figuring out what pace he wants the offense to play at. I'm sure he has input on that sort of thing. And I feel like his fingerprints are still in the offense in some way, shape, or form. He may not be calling the plays, but I think he's behind some of the strategy. And that's really kind of holding us back there. You know, as far as Kansas's record, you know, I might be able to settle for like a 6-6 Kansas, because that's a big jump for Kansas. That's 4 times as many wins they had last year. Jalen Daniels, I don't want to poo-poo on him. He's an exceptional player. You know, all the way through the game up until they won it, I was saying, you know, I have a hard time seeing him stay at Kansas his entire career. But if Kansas keeps trending the way it does, then, you know, he can be a main cornerstone for why they're doing that. So no ill will towards him. He's a fantastic player, but, you know, he's only one guy, and he basically single-handedly beat the Mountaineers. And I think, you know, Neil has to win at least 7 games, and right now it's not looking like he can.